I sat at the head of the polished mahogany conference table, staring at the people I once considered family. The room was wrapped in complete silence, the kind that comes just before everything falls apart. The soft hum of the air conditioner faded into the background as the sound of my own heartbeat filled my ears. My wife's funeral had barely passed, yet the people closest to me had already begun fighting over what I had spent a lifetime building. My daughter-in-law, Monica, leaned forward and placed both hands firmly on the table. She didn't look like a woman grieving a family loss. She looked like someone who believed victory was already hers. Without hesitation, she dropped a thick stack of legal papers onto the table. The loud crack echoed through the silent boardroom. A cold smile crossed her face. "Now that the old woman is gone," she said confidently, "it's time to transfer the company into my son's name. You're finished here, Richard. This business belongs to us now." I turned toward my son, Derek, sitting quietly beside her. He couldn't even bring himself to look me in the eyes. They believed they had cornered a grieving 70-year-old man who no longer had the strength to fight back. But they had forgotten one important fact. I was the man who built the empire they wanted to take. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I simply smiled, folded my hands together, and waited. Exactly 3 seconds later, the heavy boardroom doors opened. My attorney, Victor Lang, walked inside carrying a single document. Without saying a word, he stepped to the table and placed a certified DNA test directly in front of Monica. Before I tell you what that report revealed and how everything changed in an instant, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to someone who took your kindness for weakness. To understand how we reached that boardroom, we have to go back 3 days. The sweet scent of funeral lilies still lingered throughout my home. Diane was gone. 45 wonderful years of marriage had ended after a heartbreaking battle with pancreatic cancer. The house felt painfully empty. I stood alone at the kitchen sink, absent-mindedly washing a drinking glass just to keep my hands busy. Anything was better than staring at the empty chair where Diane used to sit every evening. The granite countertop beneath my hands felt cold. She had chosen that countertop herself because she loved the kitchen. Now someone who had never truly appreciated her was standing there demanding everything she had worked so hard to build. The sharp click of expensive heels echoed across the hardwood floor. I shut off the faucet and dried my hands. Monica walked into the kitchen. There wasn't a single tear on her face. Dressed in a tailored black designer suit, she looked more prepared for a corporate takeover than a family mourning. Without offering a single word of sympathy, or even asking how I was coping, she dropped a thick folder onto the counter. The sound was deliberate. Across the front page, bold letters read, "Emergency, handover, and succession agreement." I looked up at her. "What is this, Monica?" I asked calmly. She sighed dramatically, as though she were dealing with someone unreasonable. "It's for your own good, Richard," she replied smoothly. "You're 70 years old. You've just lost Diane, and you're not in the right condition to keep running Caldwell Logistics. You need to sign these papers today so executive control can be transferred to Chase." Chase was my 18-year-old grandson. He had barely finished high school and spent far more time showing off luxury cars on social media than learning anything about running a business. A heavy feeling settled in my chest. Caldwell Logistics wasn't simply a company. It represented my entire life's work. Diane and I had built that $15 million business from one rusty delivery truck back in 1985. We had no wealthy investors. Only $100, endless determination, and a dream we refused to give up. We spent years eating cold sandwiches in parking lots, sleeping inside the truck between deliveries, and fighting for every customer we earned. While I drove through snowstorms making deliveries, Diane handled the books from a small folding table. Now, only 3 days after burying the woman who helped build everything beside me, my daughter-in-law expected me to hand the business over to a teenager while she quietly controlled everything behind the scenes. I refused to let my emotions take over. Business had taught me long ago that the first person to lose control usually loses the negotiation. "The company is operating perfectly well," I said calmly. "I'm grieving Monica, I'm not incapable." Right on cue, my son Derek entered the kitchen. At 42 years old, he still looked like a man waiting for someone else to make decisions for him. He stepped closer and gently rested a hand on my shoulder, wearing an expression of carefully rehearsed concern. The custom suit he wore had been paid for by me. The comfortable life he enjoyed existed because I had provided it. Yet there he stood, ready to push me aside before the flowers on his mother's grave had even begun to fade. "Dad," Derek said softly, "please listen to Monica. The doctor said your blood pressure has been dangerously high since Mom became ill. We're worried about you. We don't want to lose you too." He paused before continuing. "Just sign the papers. Let Chase hold the title through the family trust. Monica and I will manage the company while you finally get the rest you deserve. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." It sounded thoughtful. It sounded caring. It was also the perfect lie. A devoted son and a concerned daughter-in-law offering to help an elderly father. But I knew Derek better than anyone. I had invested millions in his Ivy League education, only to watch him grow into a man incapable of making important decisions without first looking to his wife for approval. My eyes settled on the expensive gold pen Monica had carefully placed beside the documents. "I'll think about it," I replied quietly, taking one step back from the counter. "I need a little time to review these legal documents before signing anything." Derek nodded quickly, clearly relieved that I hadn't rejected their proposal outright. "Of course, Dad," he replied with a forced smile. "Take all the time you need. Just don't wait too long. The market is unpredictable right now, and the company needs stable leadership." The two of them turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the paperwork. I stood silently beside the counter, my heart beating heavily in my chest. Slowly, I looked toward the large bay window overlooking the hallway, against the dark evening outside. The glass reflected the inside of the house like a mirror. In that reflection, I noticed Monica stop near the front door. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out her phone, and quickly typed a message. She had no idea I could clearly see everything through the reflection. I watched as her fingers moved rapidly across the screen. The moment she pressed send, she whispered to herself with a satisfied grin. The old man fell for it. Then she quietly added, "Get everything ready." She slipped the phone back into her purse and walked away. I remained standing in the silent kitchen, while the faucet continued dripping behind me. They truly believed I was nothing more than a grieving old widower who would simply surrender everything. They thought they had outplayed me inside my own home. They couldn't have been more mistaken. Losing the person you love doesn't mean losing the strength to fight. And I wasn't about to give up. The following morning, I woke long before sunrise. Sleep had barely found me. Without Diane, the silence inside the house felt unbearable. Knowing my own family was secretly working against me made it even harder to breathe. I needed something familiar. I needed to walk through Caldwell Logistics and remind myself who I had always been. By 6 o'clock, I pulled into the executive parking area. The cool morning air greeted me as I stepped toward the towering glass headquarters. This company wasn't just a business. It represented my life's work. I walked through the quiet lobby, greeted the overnight security guard with a nod, and took the private elevator to the executive floor. Instead of entering my office, I headed straight for the executive archives. That room contained backup records of every major financial transaction, ownership agreement, and corporate trust connected to Caldwell Logistics. If Monica and Derek planned to seize control of the company, those records would be their first target. When I reached the secured archive entrance, I removed my master access card and swiped it across the reader. I expected the familiar green light. Instead, a harsh beep echoed through the hallway. A bright red light flashed. Access denied. For a moment, I simply stared at the display. My card wasn't an ordinary access badge. It had unrestricted authorization for every room in the building. I tried again. Another red light. Another rejection. A third attempt produced exactly the same result. Having trouble getting in, Richard. The voice came from nearby, breaking the silence. I turned around. Bradley Jenkins stepped into the hallway. Our chief financial officer was 45 years old, dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, with an overpowering cloud of expensive cologne surrounding him. He looked unusually comfortable for someone arriving at the office before sunrise. "Bradley," I said calmly, "my master access card seems to have stopped working. It won't let me into the executive archives." He smiled a little wider. "Oh, that's right," he replied. "I should have mentioned it. We're upgrading the company's security system this weekend." Derek approved a complete overhaul of the digital access controls while the technicians migrate sensitive files. Until it's finished, restricted areas are temporarily locked. I repeated his words carefully. Derek approved it. Bradley nodded without hesitation. Yes, he thought this was the right time. He mentioned you'd be taking some personal leave after Diane's passing, so he decided to move forward with the upgrade. Then he added with another practiced smile, "Don't worry, Richard. Everything is under control. You should go home and focus on yourself." I looked directly into Bradley's eyes. Behind the polite smile, I saw calculation. He knew exactly what was happening. And he knew I understood it too. They had locked me out of my own company. While hiding behind a so-called system upgrade, they were creating a digital wall to keep me away from records I was never supposed to lose access to. Derek had become the public face of the plan. Years ago, I might have reacted with anger. I might have demanded security unlock the archives immediately and exposed everyone involved. But decades in business had taught me something far more valuable. The moment you lose control of your emotions, you reveal your strategy to your opponent.